ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्त वृंदा। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। In this session, we will continue to discuss from the 6th chapter of the first canto Srimad Bhagavatam, verses 4 onwards. Today we will discuss 4 to 9, that is about 6 verses. The fourth verse, Prakalpa Vishayam Etam Smrutim Te Munisattama Nahi Esha Vyavadhat Kala Esha Sarva Nirakritihi. The meaning of this verse is, O great sage. This verse is spoken by Vyasadeva as an inquiry to Narad Muni. Vyasadeva is inquiring from Narada about the further events after his initiation in his previous life, Narada's previous life. So Vyasadeva's inquiry now is, O great sage, time annihilates everything in due course. So how is it that this subject matter, which happened prior to this day of Brahma, is still fresh in your memory, undisturbed by time? We have to be reminded that Narada is speaking of his previous life in a previous kalpa. Kalpa means a day of Brahma. In one day of Brahma, there are 1000 cycles of the 4 yugas on this earth. So, something which happened billions of years back, and after that happened, everything was completely annihilated. Still, how is it fresh in the mind of Narada? That is Vyasadeva's question. So Srila Prabhupada explains, how is it fresh? Srila Prabhupada says, a spirit is not annihilated even after the annihilation of the material body. So also, spiritual consciousness is not annihilated. So we are spirit soul. Spirit soul is eternal, never destroyed, no birth, no death, no deterioration. And the body is, of course, it is destroyed after death. So unlike the body which is destroyed, every time we acquire a body, it will be destroyed. So body is destroyed, yes, but not the spirit soul. Similarly, spiritual consciousness. Now consciousness belongs to the spirit. Consciousness doesn't belong to the body or doesn't belong to anything material. Just like all the material objects around us, they are all dead matter. There is no consciousness in them. Similarly, the body itself independently does not have consciousness. Then, what is the consciousness we exhibit while in this body? So that Srila Prabhupada explains that Narada developed his spiritual consciousness even when he had his material body in the previous kalpa, in the previous day of Brahma. He developed the spiritual consciousness. Now, consciousness of the material body means spiritual consciousness expressed through the medium of a material body. Just like everybody exhibits consciousness, all living persons, even though they are not situated in spiritual consciousness, whatever consciousness they are exhibiting the consciousness of the spirit through the medium of the material body. Now, this consciousness exhibited through the material body is inferior, it is destructible, and it is perverted. It is not permanent. Just like even in this life, you can see a child exhibits consciousness of a small child, behavior or the characteristics of a small child. The same child, when it grows up, when its consciousness changes from the consciousness of a child to consciousness of a young adult, it's completely different. The consciousness is different. So that consciousness of a child is gone with that child body. The child body is no longer there, so that consciousness of a child is not there exhibited anymore. It is gone with the body. Whereas the spiritual consciousness is not dependent on the condition or the state of the body. It is the awakening of the spirit. It is the awakening of the spirit. So that is the super consciousness of the supra mind, as Prabhupada says here. It is a spiritual consciousness which is above material consciousness, and it is of the super mind, the spiritual mind, not the material mind. And it is on the spiritual plane, it is on the spiritual platform. It is as good as the spirit soul and is never destroyed, never annihilated. So this is the explanation Srila Prabhupada gives, how Narada did not forget what happened in a previous day of Brahma, when everything at the end of the day of Brahma was annihilated. So everything is annihilated means except the spirit and the spiritual consciousness, everything else is annihilated. So the fifth verse, Narada Vacha, Narad Muni now responds to Vyasadeva's questions. Bhikshubhir vipravasite vijnana adeshtrubhir mama vartamano vayasyadye tata etad akarasham. Narad Muni is telling Vyasadeva, Sri Narada said, the great sages who had imparted scientific knowledge of transcendence to me departed for other places, and I had to pass my life in this way. So the sages went away because their 4-month period, Chaturmasya, is over. So they resume traveling. And Narad Muni says, I had to pass my life in this way. What is that? That will be explained by Narada. How did he continue to live after the initiation? So, Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, in his previous life, when Naradji was impregnated with spiritual knowledge by the grace of the great sages, there was a tangible change in his life, although he was only a boy of 5 years. There was a significant change in his life. Even though he was a small boy, that initiation or imparting the spiritual knowledge, awakening the spirit within, that is a significant change in the life of the initiated candidate. Small boy still, the change is very, very significant. And Srila Prabhupada says, that is an important symptom visible after initiation by the bona fide spiritual master. When the bona fide spiritual master initiates a person in spiritual knowledge, then there is a visible change, very, very visible and characteristic and significant change that is visible. Actual association of devotees brings about a quick change in life for spiritual realization. The changes that happen in the practice of bhakti yoga are very quick changes, so that one progresses very fast in spiritual realization. How fast? Whereas the other processes may take millions of lifetimes, bhakti, if properly administered, is possible. Spiritual realization is possible in one moment. This is explained by Shukadeva Goswami in the beginning of the second canto. Parikshit Maharaj had only 7 days for perfecting his spiritual realization. And he was inquiring, what should I do next 7 days to achieve perfection? So these saintly persons were suggesting different methods, but all of them, except Shukadeva Goswami, everyone else said, oh, these methods which we are suggesting will take time. 7 days is very less time. So, while this discussion was going on, Parikshit Maharaj was consulting the saintly persons. So, at that time, Shukadeva Goswami walked into that assembly and everybody stood up, received him respectfully, and Parikshit Maharaj offered him a seat of honor and inquired from him, what should I do next 7 days? I have only 7 days time to perfect myself. So Shukadeva Goswami assured him that the method of pure devotional service is very, very powerful, and even if somebody is able to execute that for a very short time, just even one moment, filled with Krishna consciousness, is perfection of life achieved in a very short time. So Shukadeva Goswami gave the example of one Khatwanga Rishi. Khatwanga Rishi. He said there was one Khatwanga Rishi who had only one Muhurta time left, and he simply fixed his mind upon the lotus feet of the deity form of Krishna in a temple of Krishna. And that one Muhurta, by completely being absorbed in meditation on the deity of Krishna, in the temple of Krishna, he quit his body and went back to Godhead. Because he was fully absorbed in thought of the transcendental form of Krishna. So, he assured, giving the example, Shukadeva Goswami assured Parikshit Maharaj, giving the example of Khatwanga Rishi, you have 7 days time. One Muhurta is about 48 minutes. So in 48 minutes, Khatwanga Rishi perfected his life by practicing bhakti, by fixing his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. So now you sit and hear the Bhagavatam for 7 days, fixing your mind on the descriptions of Krishna, which I am now going to narrate. And by doing so, you will achieve perfection very quickly. Even before 7 days, you just are able to absorb your mind completely in hearing. Of course, Parikshit Maharaj was an exceptional a devotee. He sat firmly and heard for 7 days and nights continuously. And Shukadeva Goswami was the perfect spiritual master who spoke continuously, answering the various questions Parikshit raised in connection with the descriptions of Krishna, his incarnations, his devotees, his transcendental activities, his paraphernalia, his abode, everything centered around Krishna. And that is how Parikshit attained perfection in 7 days. I'll stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.